I never expected to see her again. Not here, not now, not after all these years. Yet there she was, Victoria, draped in a gown that shimmered under the chandeliers, her laughter echoing across the ballroom. I recognized that sound. It was the same laughter that once warmed my home, the same voice that whispered promises of forever, before she ripped them apart and walked away without a second thought. She wasn't alone. Her arm was linked with Damien's, the so-called elite executive she left me for. He stood tall beside her, his self-satisfied smirk barely concealed behind a crystal flute of champagne. He had the look of a man who thought he had it all: money, status, power. I wondered if he had any idea who I was. For years, Victoria assumed I was nothing. That's why she left. She wanted wealth, prestige, a life of luxury. When I was struggling to build my business, nearly scraping by, she told me point blank, "I can't waste my life waiting for you to become someone." So she walked out. She didn't wait to see if I would succeed. She didn't care. To her, I was a failure, and failures didn't deserve her patience. But what Victoria never knew, what she never bothered to stay long enough to witness, was that my failure was temporary. It became the fuel I needed to rise. And now, here we were. The universe had a cruel sense of humor. She hadn't spotted me yet. I watched as she mingled effortlessly, her practiced smile never faltering, her fingers grazing Damien's sleeve every so often, like a woman making sure her investment was still intact. Then her gaze landed on me. Her eyes widened slightly just for a moment before her lips curled into a smirk. She tilted her head, whispering something to Damien before striding toward me, confidence dripping from every step. "Oh, Ethan." Her voice was syrupy sweet, but I caught the condescension laced beneath it. I gave her a small nod, keeping my expression neutral. "Victoria," I said simply. She let out a laugh, feigning delight. "Oh my goodness, I wasn't sure it was you at first. What are you doing here?" "I was invited," I said simply. Her brows lifted slightly. "Really?" She glanced around, her eyes scanning the room as if trying to gauge whether I was telling the truth, as if a man like me didn't belong in a place like this. Damien finally joined us, his grip firm around Victoria's waist as he assessed me with mild disinterest. He extended his hand. "Damien Hartley, CEO of Hartley Enterprises." I took his hand and shook it, offering a polite nod. "Ethan Sterling." Victoria's smirk widened as though she had just confirmed something in her mind. "So, Ethan, what have you been up to these days?" There it was, the bait. She wasn't asking out of curiosity. She wanted to hear that I was still struggling, that I was still in the same place she had left me, scraping by, barely making ends meet. I almost laughed but let her have her moment. "Oh, you know," I said casually, "just working." She let out an exaggerated sigh. "Figured you always were a hard worker. What is it that you do now?" Damien chuckled, swirling his champagne. "Let me guess, one of the hotel staff or maybe a manager?" I let their assumptions hang in the air. Victoria's eyes glowed with amusement. "And you know, Damien, I used to be married to Ethan. Can you believe that? We had, well, let's just say very humble beginnings." Damien raised a brow. "You never told me that." She shrugged. "It wasn't worth mentioning. It's in the past." I nodded slowly. "Yes, it is." Victoria turned her attention back to me, her lips twitching with barely concealed mockery. "And I'd love to see your workplace. It must be quaint." I held her gaze. "You would." She nodded eagerly, linking her arm through Damien's. "And I mean, why not? I'd love to see what you've made of yourself." Damien smirked. "That could be interesting. I wouldn't mind taking a tour either." I exhaled slowly, letting a small smile touch my lips. A tour? Well, who was I to deny them that? "Of course," I said smoothly. "I'd be happy to show you around." Victoria practically beamed, certain that she had won whatever twisted game she was playing. She had no idea that this very ballroom, this luxury hotel filled with the city's elite, belonged to me. I wasn't just an employee, I was the billionaire, CEO of Ether Resorts, one of the most exclusive luxury hotel and spa chains in the world. Tonight, she was about to find out. As I led Victoria and Damien toward the elevators, I couldn't help but let my mind drift back to the past. The very past Victoria had been so eager to erase. She had once been my entire world. We met in college, back when my life was dictated by early morning shifts, late-night classes, and the constant struggle to make ends meet. I worked 3 part-time jobs just to afford tuition, barely scraping by while juggling assignments and exhaustion. But through it all, Victoria had been there, or at least, that's what I had believed at first. She was patient, supportive, even. She told me she admired my drive, that she loved my ambition. She said she believed in me, that my hard work would pay off someday. But words are easy. It was action that revealed the truth. The more I struggled, the more her patience withered. I still remember the first time she hesitated before introducing me to her friends, the way she avoided mentioning that I worked in a dingy little restaurant, how she winced when I picked her up in my beat-up second-hand car. Her parents disapproved of me from the beginning. "He's got nothing to offer you," I once overheard her mother saying. "You need a man who can provide, not one chasing some ridiculous pipe dream." Victoria didn't argue. She never did when it came to things that mattered. I ignored the warning. Signs convinced that if I just worked harder, if I proved myself, she would stay. But she didn't. I'll never forget the night she ended it. We were in our tiny apartment, the one I had fought so hard to keep. Bills were piling up. My business, Dia, was still in its infancy, and I was barely holding everything together. She sat across from me, arms crossed, her expression cold. "This isn't working," she said flatly. "I can't do this anymore." I had been exhausted, drained from another 16-hour workday. I blinked at her, trying to process what she was saying. "What do you mean?" She sighed as if she were talking to a child. "I mean, I'm done waiting, Ethan. You said things would get better, but they haven't. You're still stuck in the same place, and I can't waste my life waiting for you to make it when there's no guarantee you ever will." Her words hit harder than any punch ever could. I had sacrificed everything to build a future, and she had already decided I wasn't worth the wait. She left me that night, moving in with Damien just weeks later. And I burned for months. I felt like I had lost everything. I was drowning, suffocating under the weight of my failures. But then something changed. The pain turned into something else, something sharper, more dangerous. It became fuel. Victoria leaving me had been the final push I needed. I poured every ounce of my being into my vision. I studied harder, worked longer hours, built connections. I clawed my way into the industry, starting as a consultant for luxury hotels. I learned everything: how to attract high-end clientele, how to craft an experience so seamless that people would pay thousands just to belong. And then, when I had gathered enough knowledge, I built Ether Resorts from the ground up. The first resort opened 3 years after Victoria left me. It was an exclusive, members-only retreat, and within months, it became the most sought-after destination for the elite. The business exploded, investors lined up, new locations opened. 10 years, that's how long it took me to turn my shattered life into an empire. And now, I owned the very luxury she had abandoned me to chase. As we stepped into the elevator, Victoria's confident smirk remained in place, but I saw the faint flicker of curiosity in her eyes. "So," she said, leaning into Damien, "how long have you been working here?" I suppressed the urge to laugh. "It's been quite a while," I said smoothly. Damien chuckled, adjusting his expensive cufflinks. "But you've seen a lot of rich idiots walk through these doors, huh?" "Oh, and you have no idea," I murmured. Victoria arched a brow. "What exactly do you do here?" I met her gaze, my expression unreadable. "You'll see soon enough." The elevator chimed as we reached the executive floor. The doors slid open, revealing a space that was a world apart from what Victoria had expected. She had imagined a cramped, outdated office, maybe a reception desk, a cubicle at best. Instead, she was met with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city skyline, polished marble floors, and an opulent executive lounge filled with individuals in sharp suits and designer attire. Victoria froze, trying to process what she was seeing. Damien shifted uncomfortably, his earlier amusement faltering. "Wait, why are we here?" he asked. I stepped forward, leading them down the hall. "This is my workplace," I said simply. Victoria blinked. "You work up here?" Before I could respond, my assistant Charlotte approached. She was poised, professional, every bit the representation of the company's prestige. "Good evening, Mr. Sterling," she said with a polite bow. "The board meeting has been confirmed for tomorrow, and the finance reports have been sent to your private server. Do you need anything else before your next appointment?" Silence. Victoria's face drained of color. Damien's smirk vanished. I turned to face them fully, my voice calm and controlled. "Let me reintroduce myself." I allowed the pause to hang in the air, letting the weight of my next word settle. "Ethan Sterling, CEO of Ether Resorts." Victoria's lips parted slightly, her breath catching. Damien's grip on her arm tightened as panic flickered in his eyes. For years, Victoria had assumed I was beneath her, that I had been left behind, forgotten. Tonight, that illusion had just shattered. Victoria's stunned silence was satisfying, but I wasn't done yet. Damien cleared his throat, forcing an uneasy chuckle. "You're the CEO?" His voice lacked the confidence he had exuded earlier. "Yes," I said smoothly, watching his reaction. "Didn't Victoria tell you?" Victoria's throat bobbed as she swallowed hard. I didn't know," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. Of course she didn't. She had never looked back, she had never cared to check. As far as she was concerned, I had been nothing when she walked away, and I would always be nothing. But she had been wrong. I gestured toward the expansive office before us. "Welcome to Ether Resorts, the luxury empire I built from scratch." Damien's eyes darted around, taking in the modern decor, the sleek furniture, the artwork on the walls, each piece carefully curated, worth more than the car he had arrived in. His jaw tightened, and I could see it in his expression. He realized he had underestimated me. But this wasn't just about proving my success. This was about the journey, the years of struggle, the relentless drive, the sacrifices that had led. Here, I walked toward my office, pushing the glass doors open. Inside, the room was bathed in soft lighting, the massive desk positioned to overlook the city skyline. Charlotte followed, professionally poised as always. "Mr. Sterling," she said, "our financial team has sent the latest quarterly reports. The revenue from our newest Dubai resort has exceeded expectations. Shall I have the numbers prepared for your board review?" "Yes," I said without hesitation. Victoria and Damien just stared. The woman who once laughed at my dreams, who told me I would never amount to anything, was now standing in the empire I had built, one she had never believed in. I took a seat behind my desk, my fingers drumming lightly on the polished wood. "Would you like a drink?" I asked, my voice calm and measured. "We stock only the finest here." Victoria didn't answer. Damien, on the other hand, straightened his posture, trying to regain his composure. "Champagne. If you have it, of course." I nodded to Charlotte, who stepped away to fetch the drinks. "So you said earlier that you wanted to see my shabby workplace. Is it what you expected?" Victoria clenched her jaw, but Damien forced a laugh. "We were just joking, of course." "Of course," I said, though we both knew he was lying. "Victoria," finally spoke, her voice hesitant. "Ethan, I raised a hand, stopping her. "Let me tell you something," I said, my tone steady. "When you left, I was nothing. A man with a failing business, drowning in debt, wondering if I'd ever make it. You made sure I knew exactly how worthless you thought I was. But that's the thing about hitting rock bottom. It forces you to rise. Every insult, every doubt, every moment of struggle, they became my fuel. I built Ether Resorts not just to prove myself, but because I refused to let people like you decide my worth." The weight of my words hung between us. Damien shifted, clearly uncomfortable. "Well, business is business," he said, attempting to sound casual. It's all about timing, right? I smirked. Yes, and mine couldn't have been better. Because I hadn't just built a company, I had built dominance in the industry. Ether Resorts was the gold standard of luxury. Every resort, every spa, every high-end location bore my signature of exclusivity. I catered to the elite, the kind of people Damien wished he could mingle with. Charlotte stepped forward. Mr. Sterling, shall I prepare your next meeting? I glanced at Victoria and Damien. Actually, I have some time. Why don't I give our guests a little more insight into my world? Victoria hesitated, but Damien, his pride clearly wounded, nodded. Sure, why not? I stood, leading them out of my voice. As we walked down the executive floor, I gestured toward the surrounding offices. Each of these rooms belongs to a department that runs Ether Resorts, from marketing to real estate acquisitions to investor relations. Every decision made here shapes an empire worth billions. Damien's expression tightened. I continued. You see, luxury isn't just about wealth. It's about perception. People pay for status, for exclusivity. They don't just buy a hotel stay, they buy an identity. And I made sure Ether Resorts became the ultimate identity for the elite. Victoria exhaled slowly, as if trying to process just how far I had come. But I wasn't done. We reached a conference room where my top executives were in a meeting. The walls were glass, giving a clear view of the discussion happening inside. A slideshow displayed figures, profits in the hundreds of millions, acquisitions progress, global expansion plans. Victoria's eyes widened. Damien stiffened. I let the moment sink in. Oh, is this what you left behind? I finally said. Victoria turned to me, her lips slightly parted, her confidence crumbling. Damien, clearly eager to change the subject, forced another smile. Well, it's an impressive setup, I'll give you that. But success isn't just about money, right? I smirked. True, it's also about who holds the power. Victoria gripped her purse tightly, avoiding my gaze. The realization had hit her. She had traded me for a future that wasn't guaranteed. And now she was standing in front of the man she had underestimated and lost forever. I glanced at my watch. So I have a meeting soon, so I'll have Charlotte escort you both out. But before you leave, I paused, my gaze steady. Enjoy the night. And next time you think of me as just another low-level worker, remember whose name is on the building. The high air in the room was heavy, almost suffocating, as Victoria and Damien absorbed the weight of the truth. My truth, the reality they never expected. I wasn't the struggling, insignificant man they had envisioned all these years. I wasn't the failure Victoria had abandoned, or the shadow she assumed had faded into obscurity. I was the CEO of Ether Resorts, the man who had built an empire from the very rubble she left behind. Damien, clearly trying to mask his discomfort, forced a tight-lipped smile. Well, Ethan, I have to admit this is impressive. I chuckled low. And deliberate. Just impressive? Damien hesitated, his jaw tightening. I mean, sure, you've done well for yourself. Victoria remained silent, her eyes darting around the room as if searching for something, anything, to hold on to. But there was nothing. No witty retort, no subtle insult that could diminish what was in front of her. She had lost that power. Leaned back against my desk, watching them. Only you wanted to see my workplace? I said smoothly. Why don't I give you a proper tour? Victoria's lips parted slightly, but she quickly closed them, nodding instead. Damien shrugged. Why not? I gestured for them to follow me as I stepped out of my office. Charlotte was already waiting outside, her expression composed as always. Mr. Sterling, she said, handing me a sleek tablet. The projected revenue from our newest Dubai resort has exceeded expectations. We've also finalized negotiations with the Paris acquisition. Good. Prepare the final contracts for my review. Of course, sir, Charlotte replied smoothly, immediately stepping away to make the call. Victoria's steps faltered as she glanced between us, no doubt realizing just how far I had come. I led them down the executive hallway, where each office housed the minds that kept Ether Resorts running at its peak. The walls were lined with Glass giving a clear view of the high-level meetings taking place, discussions of multi-million-dollar projects, expansions, branding strategies. We stopped by one of the conference rooms where a digital presentation displayed our latest global acquisitions. "This is where we make the real decisions," I said. "Every investment, every partnership, it all happens here." Damien frowned slightly. "Ether owns this many properties?" I smirked. "And more. We operate in over 20 countries with new expansions already in motion." Victoria inhaled sharply. I had no idea. Of course she didn't. She had never bothered to check. She had assumed I had failed, that I'd stayed stagnant, trapped in the same struggles that once defined me. But assumptions had a way of unraveling. I continued walking, leading them toward the very important person guest suites. The hallways were adorned with exquisite artwork, the soft scent of luxury perfumes filling the air. As we reached the penthouse level, I turned to them. "See, this is the Ether Signature Suite, reserved for only the most exclusive guests." Damien scoffed. "And what? It's just another overpriced hotel room?" I smiled. "See for yourself." I pushed the doors open, revealing the epitome of luxury. The suite was breathtaking. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city skyline, a private infinity pool shimmering under the soft glow of golden chandeliers, plush velvet sofas, handcrafted wooden tables, a grand fireplace. Every detail was meticulously curated for the highest level of comfort. Victoria stepped inside hesitantly, her fingertips grazing the silk curtains. "This is incredible," she murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. Damien, however, remained near the entrance, arms crossed. "Twish, how much does a night in here cost?" he asked, forcing a smirk. I met his gaze. "Starting rate $15,000 per night." His smirk vanished. Victoria turned to me, eyes wide. $15,000? I nodded. "Some guests stay for weeks at a time." She inhaled sharply. That was more than she had ever dreamed of spending on a single hotel stay. The irony wasn't lost on me. She had left because she wanted wealth, luxury, security, and yet the man she had abandoned was the one who had built an empire. Around those very things, she could have had this. She could have had all of it. Damien's expression was unreadable, but I could see the tension in his jaw, the way his hands clenched at his sides. He had assumed he was the successful one, that Victoria had upgraded when she chose him. But standing here in my world, he realized just how wrong he had been. I let the silence stretch for a moment before speaking. "Shall we continue?" Victoria swallowed hard, nodding stiffly. We moved through the corridors, passing by private event spaces, a world-class spa, and an exclusive rooftop restaurant with a month-long waiting list. Victoria's posture stiffened with each passing moment, her realization settling deeper with every luxurious detail. She had chosen wrong. I stopped at a private lounge, stepping inside and gesturing for them to take a seat. "And have a drink," I offered, pouring myself a glass of scotch. "You must be exhausted from the tour." Damien waved, a hand dismissively. "We're fine." Victoria, however, hesitated before reaching for a glass of wine. She needed it, needed something to dull the humiliation. I sipped my drink slowly, watching them. "Once you told me, Victoria, that I would never be successful, that I wasn't worth waiting for." She flinched at the reminder. I leaned forward, slightly. "Tell me, do you still believe that?" Her fingers tightened around the glass. Damien shifted beside her, clearly eager to leave. "This has been educational," he said, standing abruptly. "But we should get going." Victoria didn't move right away. Her lips parted slightly, her gaze lingering on me as if she wanted to say something. But what could she say? What could she possibly say now that everything she had believed had been shattered? I leaned back in my chair, my expression unreadable. "Oh, take your time," I said smoothly. "After all, it's not every day you get a glimpse of what you threw away." The silence stretched between us, thick and suffocating. Victoria sat frozen in her seat, her fingers still wrapped around the stem of her wine glass. She hadn't taken a sip. I could see it in her eyes. The realization, the slow, agonizing awareness of what she had lost. Damien, on the other hand, was unraveling. He adjusted his cufflinks, shifting uncomfortably in his chair. The smug arrogance he had carried all evening was fading, replaced by something that looked suspiciously like fear. "Well," he said, clearing his throat. "This was interesting." I smirked, swirling the amber liquid in my glass. "Was it?" Damien shot me a sharp look. "Yeah, but at the end of the day, success isn't just about money, right? It's about happiness, fulfillment, not just wealth." I chuckled, low and deliberate. Rich coming from the man who judged me based on where he thought I worked. His jaw tightened. Victoria finally exhaled, placing her untouched glass on the table. I should have known," she murmured, more to herself than to anyone else. Damien turned to her sharply. "What?" She shook her head, dazed. "I should have known that Ethan wouldn't stay in the same place." Her eyes flickered toward me, regret evident in every movement. I never imagined this." Her voice was quieter now, almost vulnerable. I didn't respond right away. I wanted her to sit in that realization a little longer, to truly feel it. She had assumed that I had failed, that I had remained the struggling man she walked away from. But reality had a way of punishing assumptions. I leaned back, my gaze steady. "Oh no, Victoria. You didn't care enough to imagine it." Her lips parted, slightly, a flicker of hurt crossing her face. Damien scoffed. "All right, that's enough. We get it. You've done well for yourself. Congratulations. But don't act like you're some victim." I turned my attention to him, amused. "A victim?" I said. "So you act like Victoria ruined my life," Damien said, crossing his arms. "But from where I'm sitting, it looks like she did you a favor." I let out a slow, dark laugh. "A favor? Yeah," he said, leaning forward. "If she hadn't left, you might still be nobody. Sometimes rejection makes people work harder. Maybe her leaving was the best thing that ever happened to you." Victoria stiffened beside him. I tilted my head, considering his words. "Only, you might be right," I said finally. Damien smirked as if he had won something. But I continued. "Let's not pretend she left as some kind of selfless act to help me grow. She left because she was impatient. She left because she was greedy. She left because she didn't believe in me." Victoria flinched. Damien's smirk faded. "And now," I continued, my voice calm but pointed, "she realizes that she bet on the wrong future." Victoria inhaled sharply. Damien's hands clenched into fists. I stood slowly, adjusting my cuffs. "Sebastian, the problem with people like you is that you think wealth is just about having money. But true power, true wealth, it's about control, influence. It's about having people underestimate you and then proving them dead wrong." Damien's throat bobbed as he swallowed. Victoria was trembling slightly. She had never expected this, never expected to see me again, never expected that the man she had dismissed would become someone she could never reach again. I turned to Charlotte, who had been standing quietly by the door. "Oh, prepare a car for them," I said. "And I think they've seen enough for tonight." "Of course, Mr. Sterling," Charlotte replied smoothly, immediately stepping away to make the call. Victoria looked like she wanted to say something. Her lips parted slightly. Hesitation, written all over her face. I waited, but she said nothing because there was nothing to say. Apologies wouldn't change the past. Regret wouldn't rewrite the choices she had made. She had walked away, and now she had to live with that decision. I turned back to Damien, who was still glaring at me, clearly itching to salvage his ego. "And you said earlier that success isn't just about money," I said. "Until it's about happiness," Damien scoffed. "Yeah," I smirked. "Are you happy?" Damien's face darkened. Victoria turned to him sharply, her expression shifting just slightly, but I caught it. Doubt, suspicion, regret. Damien clenched his jaw. "Oh, we should go," he muttered, grabbing Victoria's hand and yanking her toward the exit. Victoria didn't resist, but as they reached the door, she glanced back at me one last time. Her eyes were full of something she never thought she would feel toward me. Longing, regret. But it was too late. She had made her choice, and I had already moved on. I watched as Victoria and Damien disappeared through the doors, Charlotte following closely behind to escort them out. The moment they were gone, the room felt lighter, quieter. I exhaled slowly, setting my drink down on the polished marble bar. Victoria had finally seen what she had thrown away, and it had shaken her to her core. But this wasn't over yet. Victoria had left me because she wanted wealth, security, a life of effortless luxury. She had thought Damien was her golden ticket to that world. And now I was curious to see just how secure their life really was. I walked over to my desk, pressing a button on the intercom. "Charlotte, get me everything we have on Damien Hartley." A slight pause, then her crisp response. "Right away, Mr. Sterling." I had learned long ago that power wasn't just about money. It was about information, knowing the right things at the right time, being 3 steps ahead while everyone else was still playing catch-up. And if there was one thing I knew about men like Damien, it was that their arrogance often outweighed their intelligence. I leaned back in my chair, waiting. 15 minutes later, Charlotte returned, a slim tablet in her hand. She placed it on my desk and stepped aside, giving me a knowing look. "I think you'll find this interesting." I tapped the screen, scanning through the information, and then I smiled because Damien Hartley was drowning. His once successful finance firm was gone. It had declared bankruptcy 6 months ago. His personal assets were depleted. He had cashed out stocks, maxed out credit lines, and taken desperate loans, all while trying to maintain the illusion of a high-flying executive. Damien Hartley wasn't a wealthy businessman. He was a man barely holding his life together. And Victoria had left me for this. I almost laughed. It was poetic. She had abandoned me because she didn't want to struggle, because she didn't want uncertainty, because she wanted a shortcut to luxury. And now she was standing on crumbling ground, and she had no idea. I tapped my fingers against the desk, considering my next move. I could let this play out naturally, sit back and watch his reality slowly crush them. But where was the fun in that? No, if Damien was struggling, I wanted him to feel it. I picked up my phone, dialing a number from memory. A deep voice answered. On the second ring, "Kingston, Jared here." I greeted him smoothly. "My favorite acquisitions expert, Jared." Jared laughed. "Busy. What do you need?" I leaned back in my chair, uncrossing my legs. "Ever heard of Hartley Enterprises?" A pause. "Damien Hartley's firm? Yeah, they're bleeding money. The vultures are circling." "Good," I said, smiling. "Buy out whatever's left of his assets." Quietly. "I don't want him knowing it's me yet." Jared let out a low whistle. "You really don't play around, do you?" I chuckled. "Not when someone needs a reminder of who holds the real power." "Consider it done," Jared said. "I'll send the reports over by the end of the week." I hung up, satisfaction settling deep in my chest. Damien had spent the night mocking me, assuming he was the one on top, assuming I was still some insignificant man scraping by. Now he was about to lose whatever little he had left. And Victoria had no idea that the life she had bet on was built on borrowed time. The next day I arrived at my office early. Charlotte was already there, as efficient as ever. "Mr. Sterling," she greeted, "the financial reports on Hartley Enterprises are in your inbox." She hesitated slightly. "And Victoria Hartley called this morning." I arched a brow. "Oh?" Charlotte nodded. "She requested a meeting." Now that was unexpected, Victoria coming to me. I leaned back, curiosity sparking. "Did she say why?" "Oh no," Charlotte said. But she sounded urgent. I smirked. Desperation has a way of making people humble, doesn't it? Charlotte's lips twitched in amusement. "Shall I schedule a meeting?" I considered it for a moment. Victoria had already lost the upper hand. She had already seen just how far I had risen. Now she was coming to me, and I wanted to know why. "And schedule it for tomorrow," I said finally. "Let her wait a little." Charlotte nodded. Of course, Mr. Sterling. As she left, I exhaled slowly, running a hand through my hair. Victoria was reaching out, and that meant only one thing. She knew. Maybe she had finally seen through Damien's lies. Maybe she had realized that the man she left me for wasn't the powerful, secure provider she had thought he was. Or maybe she just wanted a way back into my world. I smiled to myself. Whatever the reason, whatever she thought she was coming here for, she was about to learn something else. I was no longer the man she could walk away from. She had made her choice, and now she had to live with it. The next day, I arrived at my office earlier than usual. The skyline stretched before me through the floor-to-ceiling windows, bathed in golden morning light. I sipped my coffee slowly, letting the warmth settle as I anticipated what was to come. Victoria was coming to see me. It had been years since she walked out of my life without looking back, certain that I would never amount to anything. But today she had reached out, and I knew exactly why. She had discovered the truth about Damien. I had seen it in her eyes last night. The flicker of doubt, the unspoken fear, the moment she realized that the man she had abandoned had built a kingdom while the one she chose was nothing more than a crumbling illusion. Now she was coming here, and I was going to enjoy every second of it. A soft knock at the door interrupted my thoughts. Charlotte stepped in, her expression as composed as ever. "Mr. Sterling, Mrs. Hartley has arrived. Shall I send her in?" I smirked. "Mrs. Hartley? How ironic. Yes, send her in." Charlotte nodded and stepped aside, allowing Victoria to enter. She walked in slowly, her posture stiff, her gaze flickering around my office. She was taking it all in, the luxurious leather chairs, the mahogany desk, the sheer dominance of the space. It was a stark contrast to the last time she had seen me struggling in our tiny run-down apartment. She looked different now. Older, yes, but also weary. This wasn't the woman who once laughed at my ambitions, who sneered at my dreams and called them childish. No, this was a woman who had been humbled. I gestured toward the chair across from me. "And have a seat, Victoria." She hesitated, then lowered herself into the chair, her hands fidgeting in her lap, something she never used to do. For the first time in my life, Victoria was nervous around me. "To what do I owe this surprise visit?" I asked smoothly, leaning back in my chair. She swallowed, her lips parting slightly before she spoke. "And I wanted to talk." I raised a brow. "Talk?" She nodded, looking down at her hands. "About last night. About everything." I took my time watching her. Last night was illuminating, wasn't it? Her jaw tightened slightly. "Oh yes." I tilted my head. "What part?" She exhaled, closing her eyes for a brief moment before looking at me again. "Everything you've accomplished." I smiled faintly. "Not what you expected, was it?" She hesitated. No, there it was, the confession, the admittance that she had underestimated me, that she had made the wrong choice. I let the silence stretch, forcing her to sit in it. Finally, she spoke again. "And Ethan, She hesitated, then sighed. "I made a mistake." I stared at her for a long moment, absorbing those words. If she had said this years ago, maybe it would have mattered. Maybe it would have been enough to wound me, to reopen old scars. But now it meant nothing. I set my coffee down with a quiet clink. "When you made a choice, Victoria," I said calmly, "you walked away when I needed you the most. And now suddenly you regret it?" She winced. I didn't know." I interrupted her, leaning forward slightly. "Do you regret that I proved you wrong?" She inhaled sharply, her hands clenching. "That's not fair." I smirked. "Isn't it?" Her lips parted, but no words came out because she knew I was right. She had left because she thought I would fail, because she didn't believe in me. And now, faced with everything I had built, she realized just how blind she had been. She straightened slightly, as if trying to reclaim some dignity. "Ethan, I didn't come here to fight. I came here because She trailed off, but I already knew what she was about to say. She wanted something. Victoria had always been good at manipulating situations to her advantage, and if she was here, it was because she thought there was still a way back in. I decided to cut to the chase. "Oh, you're here because you finally saw the truth about Damien, aren't you?" Her breath caught, her eyes widening slightly. I chuckled, shaking my head. "I know everything, Victoria." Her hands clenched in her lap. I didn't know." I leaned back, enjoying the slow unraveling. "Tell me," I said, my tone matter of fact. "How did you find out? Did he finally admit it, or did you start noticing the cracks? The late nights, the secret phone calls, the sudden tension whenever money came up?" Her shoulders slumped slightly. "At first it was small. He became distant, distracted. Then I realized he wasn't taking calls in front of me anymore. Bills started piling up. He told me it was just a rough patch." I smirked. "And you believed him?" She exhaled shakily. "And I wanted to, but last night changed everything. Seeing you, seeing this." She gestured around my office, her voice raw. It made me realize how blind I was. Silence stretched between, and then she finally asked the question I had been expecting. "Ethan," she said quietly, "is there any way we could try again?" I let the words hang in the air, letting her feel the weight of them. Victoria Hartley, the woman who once walked away from me without a second thought, was now sitting in front of me, asking for another chance. I inhaled slowly, then exhaled, and I smiled. Not out of happiness, but out of pure satisfaction. Because Victoria was about to learn the most cruel twist of fate. She had left me for a man she thought was better, and now she wanted to come back. But the thing about choices is, you don't always get to undo them. Victoria's voice trembled slightly as she asked the question again. "Is there any way we could try again?" I stared at her, letting the words settle in the air. The woman who had once mocked me, who had left me in my darkest moment, now sat across from me, asking for another chance. She had left because she thought I was going nowhere. She had chosen a man she thought was better, and now she wanted back in. I exhaled slowly, leaning forward. "Let me get this straight," I said, my voice calm. "You walked away from me when I had nothing. You married another man because he could give you the life you wanted. And now that you've realized that life was built on lies and borrowed money, you're sitting here asking me if we can try again." Victoria flinched, her fingers twisting together in her lap. She didn't know. She murmured. I didn't know he was lying. I cut in smoothly. "Because you never cared about the truth. You only cared about what looked like success. And now that the illusion is gone, you're scrambling for a backup plan." She inhaled sharply, blinking rapidly. "That's not fair." I chuckled, shaking my head. "Not fair?" She winced. "Tell me, Victoria," I said, my voice softer now, almost mocking. "If I were still the same man you left years ago, if I were still struggling, would you be sitting here?" Silence. She couldn't answer because we both knew the truth. She only wanted me now because I had won, because I had become everything she thought I never would. And that was the most satisfying part of all. I stood up, walking around my desk until I was right in front of her. "Do you know what the best part of this is, Victoria?" I asked, my voice deceptively calm. She looked up at me, her eyes uncertain. "What?" I smiled. "I don't want you back." Her breath caught. I saw it. The exact moment reality hit her. The moment she realized that she had lost me forever. She had spent all these years assuming I was beneath her, assuming I had failed, assuming I had been waiting for the day she might return. But I hadn't. I had moved on. I had built something so beyond her reach that even now, sitting in front of me, she wasn't worthy of stepping back into my world. She opened her mouth, then closed it, her hands gripping the arms of the chair. "Ethan, please," she whispered, her voice raw. I shook my head, cutting her off. "No, Victoria," she swallowed hard, her face paling. "So, you made your choice," I continued, my voice as sharp as a blade. "And now you have to live with it." Tears welled in her eyes, but I felt nothing. No pity, no sympathy, just satisfaction. Because this was justice. I straightened, walking back to my desk. "Charlotte," I called out, my voice steady. The door opened almost immediately. Charlotte, stepping inside with her usual composed expression. "Yes, Mr. Sterling." "And Mrs. Hartley was just leaving," I said simply. Victoria's lips parted. "Ethan, wait." I didn't look at her. I didn't need to. She'd already lost. Charlotte gave a polite nod. "Oh, this way, Mrs. Hartley." Victoria hesitated for only a moment before rising slowly to her feet. I could feel her looking at me, waiting, hoping for something. But there was nothing left to say. She had walked away once, and I had made sure she could never walk back. She turned and left the office, her heels clicking softly against the marble floor. As the door shut behind her, I exhaled slowly, running a hand over my jaw. That was it. The end of Victoria Hartley. I leaned back in my chair, a slow smirk forming on my lips. The ultimate revenge wasn't wealth, it wasn't power, it wasn't success. It was knowing that the person who once belittled you, betrayed you, abandoned you, was now the one begging to be in your life again, and knowing that they could never have that chance. The moment the door shut behind Victoria, silence filled the room. I sat there staring at the space she had just occupied, but I felt nothing. No lingering regret, no what-ifs, no unresolved emotions, just satisfaction. She had walked out of my life all those years ago, never looking back. And today, she had returned, not out of love, not out of some long-lost attachment, but out of desperation. Because I had won, and she had lost everything. I leaned back in my chair, rubbing my jaw as I replayed the last few moments in my mind. The way her voice had trembled, the way she had struggled to form her words, the way she had realized, too, late, that she had chosen the wrong path. It was poetic. I had spent years pushing forward, grinding, building an empire out of nothing. She had spent those same years chasing an illusion, believing she had secured a future that would always provide for her. Now her foundation had crumbled, and I had been the one standing at the top, watching as it all collapsed beneath her feet. A soft knock at the door interrupted my thoughts. Charlotte stepped in, her expression unreadable as ever. "And Mrs. Hartley has left the building," she informed me. "Good," I said simply. She nodded but didn't leave immediately. Instead, she hesitated, something she rarely did, and I took the liberty of digging deeper into Damien Hartley's current financial situation, she said. "And there's more you might find interesting." I arched a brow. "Oh?" Charlotte walked forward, placing a sleek folder on my desk. "It turns out his debts are worse than we originally thought. He's been hiding his financial troubles not just from Victoria, but from his business partners as well. His company is crumbling, and with the recent acquisition of his remaining assets..." She met my gaze, a hint of amusement flickering in her. "And now you own everything he had left." I picked up the folder, flipping through the documents. Properties, investments, partnerships. Everything Damien Hartley had built was now mine, and he had no idea yet. I smirked, tossing the folder onto my desk. "Then set up a meeting with him," I said. Charlotte's lips twitched slightly. "Of course, Mr. Sterling." As she left, I exhaled, slowly, running a hand through my hair. Victoria was reaching out, and that meant only one thing. She knew. Maybe she had finally seen through Damien's lies. Maybe she had realized that the man she left me for wasn't the powerful, secure provider she had thought he was. Or maybe she just wanted a way back into my world. I smiled to myself. Whatever the reason, whatever she thought she was coming here for, she was about to learn something else. I was no longer the man she could walk away from. She had made her choice, and now she had to live with it. 2 days later, I sat in the private lounge of Ether Resort's flagship hotel, sipping on a glass of whiskey as I waited. Damien had arrived 20 minutes ago. Charlotte had led him to the lounge, offering him a drink, making polite conversation. He had no idea what was coming. I watched him through the glass window separating the two rooms. He sat there, legs crossed, a faint smirk on his lips, as if he still believed he had some form of control. It was almost sad, almost. I stood, adjusting the cuffs of my suit before stepping into the lounge. Damien looked up, his smirk widening. "Sterling," he greeted, his tone casual. "Didn't expect you'd actually want to meet in person." I took a seat across from him, my expression unreadable. "Damien." He leaned back, swirling the drink in his glass. "I have to admit you've done well for yourself. Quite the upgrade from where you were a few years ago." I smirked. "And quite the downgrade for you, I hear." His jaw tightened slightly, but he forced another chuckle. "Well, business cycles, you know how it is. But it's temporary." I tilted my head. "Is it?" He leaned forward, placing his glass on the table. "Sebastian, let me save you some time. Your company is dead. Your finances are in ruins. You've been pretending, scraping by, hiding from the inevitable." I paused, letting my words sink in before delivering the final blow. "And as of 2 days ago, I own everything you had left." The color drained from his face. He stared at me, his glass hovering mid-air before he slowly set it down on the table. "You're lying," he said, but his voice lacked its earlier confidence. Pulled out the folder Charlotte had given me and slid it across the table. "Oh, go ahead, take a look." He hesitated before reaching for it. The moment he opened it, his expression shattered. His hands trembled slightly as he flipped through page after page. Legal documents, transaction records, signed agreements. Everything was gone. Everything was mine. He inhaled sharply, his fingers gripping the edge of the folder. You planned this," I smiled. "No, Damien. You planned this when you built your entire life on borrowed money and arrogance." His breathing quickened, his jaw tightening. "You bastard," he hissed. I chuckled. Now, is that any way to speak to your new landlord?" His head snapped up. "What?" I leaned back, enjoying every second of this. "The penthouse you and Victoria have been living in, that company office you still pretend to run, that car you drive. All mine now." Damien's hands clenched into fists. "You can't." I interrupted him smoothly. "Oh, I already have." Silence stretched between us. Damien's breathing was uneven now, his entire body stiff with barely contained rage. I let the moment linger before standing. "Oh, and I wanted you to be the first to know," I said casually. "After all, it's only fair. You spent years thinking you were above me, and now you're nothing." Damien pushed back his chair suddenly, standing so fast that his glass nearly tipped over. His face was flushed with humiliation and fury. "Do you think this is over?" he growled. I smirked. "Damien, the thing is, it was never a fight. It was a lesson." His jaw clenched so tightly I thought he might break a tooth. I straightened, adjusting my suit. "Cheers. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Sign. I imagine it'll be your last one in my penthouse." And with that I walked out, leaving Damien Hartley to drown in his own downfall. As I stepped out of the lounge, I didn't bother looking back. There was nothing left to see. Damien Hartley, the man who once held his nose high, the man who believed he had everything, was now standing in the ruins of his own arrogance. He had mocked me, dismissed me, taken the woman who was supposed to stand by my side. And now he had lost everything, his fortune, his business, his home. And soon Victoria. I walked through the sleek marble corridors of the hotel, my shoes clicking against the polished floors. Charlotte was already waiting by the elevator, holding a folder in her hands. "Did he take the news well?" she asked, amusement lacing her voice. I smirked. "Not at all." She handed me the folder. "The final paperwork. Sebastian and Victoria have 30 days to vacate the penthouse. After that, they're officially out of your properties." I flipped through the documents, nodding in approval. It was done. The final blow had landed. Charlotte hesitated for a moment before speaking again. "Oh, there's something else." I glanced up. "What?" She pressed her lips together as if debating whether to say it, then finally spoke. Victoria is outside. She's waiting in the lobby. I exhaled slowly but wasn't surprised. Of course she was. Victoria had always been resilient in her own way. Even now, after everything that had happened, she wasn't ready to let go. Charlotte gave me a knowing look. Do you want me to send her away? I considered it. I had nothing left to say to Victoria. I had given her my answer the last time we spoke. There was no going back, but still I wanted to see what she would say, what excuse she would come up with now that her world had collapsed. I slipped the folder under my arm. Send her up to the rooftop lounge, I said. Charlotte gave a slight nod. Understood. I leaned against the glass railing, staring out at the city skyline. The rooftop lounge was private, exclusive to only a select few guests. It was quiet here, the air crisp as the evening lights flickered below. I heard the elevator doors open behind me, followed by hesitant footsteps. Then her voice. Ethan? I didn't turn around right away. I took a slow sip of my whiskey before finally facing her. Victoria stood there, wrapped in an elegant coat, her expression a mixture of nerves and desperation. She looked tired, like a woman who had been running towards something that no longer existed. Nice view, isn't it? I said casually, turning back toward the city. She stepped forward hesitantly. I didn't know where else to go. I smirked, swirling the amber liquid in my glass. You're not here because you don't have anywhere else to go, Victoria. You're here because you don't have anyone else to turn to. She flinched, but didn't deny it. I sighed, setting my drink down. What do you want? She inhaled shakily. I don't. No, she admitted. I just needed to see you. I let the silence stretch between us before speaking. And you saw me, Victoria. You saw what I became. You saw the life I built, the one you thought I'd never have. Her lips trembled. And is wrong. I chuckled, shaking my head. An understatement. She swallowed. I didn't know he was lying. I cut in smoothly. Because you never cared about the truth. You only cared about what looked like success. And now that the illusion is gone, you're scrambling for a backup plan. She inhaled sharply, blinking rapidly. That's not fair. I laughed. Not fair. She winced. Tell me, Victoria. I said, my voice softer now, almost mocking. If I were still the same man you left years ago, if I were still struggling, would you be sitting here? Silence. She couldn't answer because we both knew the truth. She only wanted me now because I had won, because I had become everything she thought I never would. And that was the most satisfying part of all. I stood up, walking around my desk until I was right in front of her. Do you know what the best part of this is, Victoria? I asked, my voice deceptively calm. She looked up at me, her eyes uncertain. What? I smiled. I don't want you back. Her breath caught. I saw it. The exact moment reality hit her. The moment she realized that she had lost me forever. She had spent all these years assuming I was beneath her, assuming I had failed, assuming I had been waiting for the day she might return. But I hadn't. I had moved on. I had built something so beyond her reach that even now, sitting in front of me, she wasn't worthy of stepping back into my world. She opened her mouth and closed it, her hands gripping the arms of the chair. Ethan, please, she whispered, her voice raw. I shook my head, cutting her off. No, Victoria. She swallowed hard, her face paling. So you made your choice, I continued, my voice as sharp as a blade, and now you have to live with it. Tears welled in her eyes, but I felt nothing. No pity, no sympathy, just satisfaction. Because this was justice. I straightened, walking back to my desk. Charlotte, I called out, my voice steady. The door opened almost immediately. Charlotte, stepping inside with her usual composed expression. Yes, Mr. Sterling? And Mrs. Hartley was just leaving, I said simply. Victoria's lips parted. Ethan, wait. I didn't look at her. I didn't need to. She'd already lost. Charlotte gave a polite nod. Oh, this way, Mrs. Hartley. Victoria hesitated for only a moment before rising slowly to her feet. I could feel her looking at me, waiting, hoping for something. But there was nothing left to say. She had walked away once, and I had made sure she could never walk back. She turned and left the office, her heels clicking softly against the marble floor. As the door shut behind her, I exhaled slowly, running a hand over my jaw. That was it, the end of Victoria Hartley. I leaned back in my chair, a slow smirk forming on my lips. The ultimate revenge wasn't wealth, it wasn't power, it wasn't success. It was knowing that the person who once belittled you, betrayed you, abandoned you was now the one begging to be in your life again, and knowing that they could never have that chance. The moment the door shut behind Victoria, silence filled the room. I sat there staring at the space she had just occupied, but I felt nothing. No lingering regret, no what-ifs, no unresolved emotions. Just satisfaction. She had walked out of my life all those years ago, never looking back. And today, she had returned, not out of love, not out of some long-lost attachment, but out of desperation. Because I had won, and she had lost everything. I leaned back in my chair, rubbing my jaw as I replayed the last few moments in my mind. The way her voice had trembled, the way she had struggled to form her words, the way she had realized, too, late, that she had chosen the wrong path. It was poetic. I had spent years pushing forward, grinding, building an empire out of nothing. She had spent those same years chasing an illusion, believing she had secured a future that would always provide for her. Now her foundation had crumbled, and I had been the one standing at the top, watching as it all collapsed beneath her feet. A soft knock at the door interrupted my thoughts. Charlotte stepped in, her expression unreadable as ever. "And Mrs. Hartley has left the building," she informed me. "Good," I said simply. She nodded but didn't leave immediately. Instead, she hesitated, something she rarely did, and I took the liberty of digging deeper into Damien Hartley's current financial situation. She said, "And there's more you might find interesting." I arched a brow. "Oh?" Charlotte walked forward, placing a sleek folder on my desk. "It turns out his debts are worse than we originally thought. He's been hiding his financial troubles not just from Victoria, but from his business partners as well. His company is crumbling, and with the recent acquisition of his remaining assets." She met my gaze, a hint of amusement flickering in her. "Now you own everything he had left." I picked up the folder, flipping through the documents. Properties, investments, partnerships. Everything Damien Hartley had built was now mine, and he had no idea yet. I smirked, tossing the folder onto my desk. "Then set up a meeting with him," I said. Charlotte's lips twitched slightly. "Of course, Mr. Sterling." As she left, I exhaled, slowly, running a hand through my hair. Victoria was reaching out, and that meant only one thing. She knew. Maybe she had finally seen through Damien's lies. Maybe she had realized that the man she left me for wasn't the powerful, secure provider she had thought he was. Or maybe she just wanted a way back into my world. I smiled to myself. Whatever the reason, whatever she thought she was coming here for, she was about to learn something else. I was no longer the man she could walk away from. She had made her choice, and now she had to live with it.